the tensions between Prince William and his father, King Charles, have reached a breaking point. Years of hidden resentments and feelings of betrayal are exploding, threatening to fracture the royal family in ways never seen before. Why does Prince William harbor animosity towards King Charles, and what has led him to view his father as a liar? Let's uncover the shocking truths behind their tumultuous relationship and the surprising reasons fueling this royal dispute, which could redefine the monarchy forever. In the early years, from the outside, the House of Windsor often appears to be a fortress of unity, a dynasty united by traditions and shared purposes. However, behind the palace walls, relationships can fracture in ways that no crown can repair. Prince William, the constant heir, and King Charles, the monarch who waited a lifetime for the throne, are no strangers to this reality. To understand why William harbors deep resentment towards his father, one must look beyond the gilded facades of Buckingham Palace and Windsor Castle. This tension is not the product of a single event, but of a series of slights, ideological clashes, and moments when Charles's priorities seemed to conflict with William's vision for the monarchy. William's childhood was far from ordinary, influenced by royal duties, strict protocols, and intense media attention. Meanwhile, Charles, sometimes overshadowed by more prominent family members, tried to mold William as the next bearer of royal traditions. In William's formative years, we see glimpses of father-son unity. Charles occasionally accompanied him to events, determined to instill the importance of duty and public service. However, behind the smiles, certain differences became evident. Charles had a passion for formalities and charitable sponsorships, involving himself in hundreds over time. From an early age, William demonstrated an affinity for causes with which he felt personally connected and seemed less concerned with numbers or royal praise. According to some informants, William had an independent streak from the beginning. As he grew up, he understood that his path to the monarchy would not be easy. Tensions between father and son intensified over time, and the differences in their visions for the future of the monarchy became more pronounced. While Charles saw the monarchy as an institution that should remain faithful to its traditions, William sought to modernize and adapt the crown to changing times. This divergence in their approaches has led to a dispute that could have lasting consequences for the royal family and the monarchy as a whole. It was announced with regret that the Prince and Princess of Wales had decided to separate. This separation between Prince Charles and the late Princess Diana could have contributed to the complications. As William matured, he was exposed to different philosophies. Diana emphasized compassion and personal commitment to common people, a commitment that went beyond superficial appearances. Meanwhile, Charles historically adhered to more formal obligations. This contrast could have made William lean towards a more accessible and down-to-earth style, fueling the initial tensions with his father's traditional perspective. Although the father-son relationship at this stage was not described as openly hostile, the seeds of conflict were subtly present. Charles, a man who had been waiting his turn in the spotlight for decades, placed great importance on tradition. William, aware of modern expectations and influenced by Diana's interpersonal style, adopted a more dynamic approach. Admittedly, Guillermo's childhood environment was full of restrictions, each of his movements was scrutinized, and he had to accept press interest from an early age. If Carlos had urged him to maintain certain established protocols, Guillermo's frustration could have gradually accumulated, with these small grievances adding up over time. What once might have been a small difference in perspectives developed into something more potent. During their early years, Guillermo and Harry experienced Carlos's parental style under the shadow of the monarchy. Carlos was often involved in charitable endeavors, foreign tours, and long official engagements. Guillermo probably internalized some lessons about being present and accessible as a result. In the transition of roles, a crucial turning point that reinforced why Prince Guillermo detests King Carlos occurred during a phase of change in the royal family. As Guillermo assumed more significant royal responsibilities, he naturally became a prominent and beloved face of the monarchy. The public adoration for Diana's eldest son fueled his popularity, which occasionally eclipsed Carlos at crucial moments for him. This shift marked the beginning of a subtle but consequential tension between Carlos and Guillermo. With decades of experience, Carlos sought to guide Guillermo's involvement, believing that the monarchy should be maintained with formality and dedication to a variety of patronages in multiple spheres. In contrast, Guillermo wanted to refine his focus, advocating for specific causes with deep personal resonance. This choice sparked rumors that Guillermo was acting out of place, although some praised his approach as refreshing, aligning with the demands of a modern era. Others argued that ignoring time-honored methods could disrupt institutional stability. Guillermo's own the monarchy also felt external pressures to adapt. Public sentiment regarding the role of the royal family had been shifting, exacerbated by the rise of social media and an increased appetite for transparency. William recognized these changing expectations and incorporated them into his perspective, while Charles, although acknowledging the need to evolve, relied on the broad approach he had built over decades. Some said he feared abandoning the proven path he had established, wanting to preserve it for the next generation. Within the palace walls, royal insiders spoke of the formation of parallel courts. One such experience, which also strengthened his resolve to provide a stable environment for his own family in the future, was the beginning of subtle cracks in their relationship during William's childhood. These cracks began to widen as William entered the public eye more. As William took on more significant royal responsibilities, his priorities and focus began to clash with Charles's, setting the stage for deeper tensions between father and son. During this transitional period, the notion of rivalry between King Charles and Prince William crystallized. Both were concerned about their roles and the continuity of the monarchy, although they pursued their objectives with divergent methods. Did this imply that William truly hated Charles, or was he simply determined to follow his own path? External observers and certain British tabloids fanned the drama, reporting on the friction between father and son with eye-catching headlines. Rumors circulated that the king had expressed his disappointment over William's refusal to take on some of Charles's long-standing patronages. In a monarchy that often values consistency, such a rejection could have deeply hurt Charles, intensifying old pains and suspicions. Guillermo wanted to distance himself from the legacy of the older generation. Guillermo's public commitments took on a more accessible tone, meeting with common citizens, advocating for mental health initiatives, and focusing on targeted conservation efforts. Meanwhile, Carlos maintained a rigorous schedule that encompassed numerous causes, including the environment, the arts, architecture, and philanthropy, revealing the scope he had adopted over decades. From the outside, one might suppose that this dynamic would not be surprising: an older king deeply rooted in established conditions and a prince determined to forge his own path in a system built on hierarchy, where a reigning monarch typically has knowledge of the activities of the royal family. Sources describe Carlos' frustration with his son's growing silence. In a system based on hierarchy, a reigning monarch typically has knowledge of the activities of the royal family. The king's supporters silently questioned whether Guillermo's stance was disrespectful. Guillermo's defenders argued that the monarchy needed innovative approaches to remain relevant, and being overshadowed by the king's established routines was not in Guillermo's plans. The younger heir, determined to carve his own path, revealed private details that underscored these differences more sharply and adversely. In the corridors of the palace, employees whisper about the complexities that mark the daily interactions of Guillermo and Carlos. One of the most discussed points is the existence of separate courts. According to informants, King Carlos maintains his network of advisors, while Prince Guillermo oversees a different team. This arrangement is not unprecedented historically, as different members of the royal family have maintained their own staff. However, observers claim that in this case, the separation has become a symbol of a deeper rivalry. In a widely circulated report, a source close to the palace commented that William is very stubborn and reserved, hiding his movements and schedule from Charles's team to the point of not listening to or accepting guidance from his father or his team. The informant also noted that William wants to maintain control, determined to avoid conforming to the old structure that King Charles considers essential to maintain. Rumors of a hidden schedule are gaining strength, and critics suggest that William, in his eagerness to forge his own identity as a future monarch, intentionally protects his planned engagements. This alleged secrecy frustrates Charles, who has spent his life under a system that coordinates agendas to avoid conflicts. Charles believes that important events, especially those that could eclipse the king's appearances, should be coordinated in advance. William, on the other hand, is accused of protecting his autonomy by defying that norm. Supporters of Prince William argue that this approach does not stem from hatred, but from a strategy to modernize royal engagements. They claim that William likes to surprise the public, using contemporary communication methods that generate enthusiasm. Meanwhile, detractors see this secrecy as a personal slight, highlighting that King Charles, despite wearing the crown, is left in the dark. At times, the tension has allegedly surfaced in personnel exchanges, with each side competing for prominence or control of the public narratives. This administrative friction may seem mundane, but in the royal family, these underlying clashes can reflect a major ideological conflict.